Good afternoon, class. It's Miss Saunders speaking. I hope you've had a great day so far. I have decided to make this lesson because I was marking your tests from last week on chapter 5, and I noticed that some of your answers were very sparse. So, what I mean by that is that they were very short and sometimes even one word. Now, at high school level, this isn't going to get you the marks that you need to pass, so I thought I'd do this lesson on answering questions just in case you weren't sure on exactly what was required of you when you go into a test or an exam. So, rule number 1, no one-word answers unless it's specified in the question. So, you'll notice when you get your test back that some people have stars on their answer sheets. This means that they at least attempted to answer the questions with full sentences and just tried to answer the questions properly, and therefore I'm not going to ask them to redo it, so you guys with stars just don't pay attention. So everyone without stars, all I want you to do is just redo those 4 questions in full sentence, preferably using some of the techniques that we've done today. Please don't view this as a punishment. It's just a homework exercise to make sure that you understand what's going on. Then number 2, you'll see that some people have the word summary at the bottom of their question paper, or their answer sheet rather. That just means that your answers didn't indicate that you'd read the passage or read the chapter, and so I'd like you to do a summary of chapter 5 so that I at least know that you have read it. And both of these things for the relevant people are due on Monday. So remember, if you have the stars, don't worry about redoing the questions. If you don't have stars, please redo the questions for Monday. And if you have the word summary at the bottom of your answer sheet, please write a summary of chapter 5 for me. Now, on to the more fun stuff. Please get your workbooks out and your Lord of the Flies set workbook. So, workbook where you can write in, and Lord of the Flies set workbook. Okay, so what I would like you to do is write down the heading answering questions in your workbook. So answering questions, that's the heading. Then you'll notice that we've got 3 objectives for the day. 1 is to read 2 extracts from Lord of the Flies. I will give you a sound bite so that that person speaking will just read along. We'll just speak and then you can read along. Then number 2, we're going to answer questions which are based on these extracts, just to practice how to answer questions. And then 3, we're going to analyze Simon's character if we have some time at the end of the lesson. Just when writing stuff down, please don't worry. I know I've got a lot of information on these slides, but I'm not expecting you to write everything down. I'll tell you what's very important and what you need to write down. So don't worry unless I tell you to, but if you want to write frantically, you are more than welcome. So, you'll see there's a question up here. I'm going to use this as an example question, so I'm going to work through this step by step, so that you can see exactly how I take the question apart and answer it, so that you can replicate this when we do some practice and then in the exam. So I'm just going to read the question. The question is, what is the sign from the world of grown-ups, and why is the sign ironic? Now, I know that this question might not make sense to you right now, but I'm going to play you the extract, and then it'll hopefully make more sense. While listening to the sound bites, I would like you to please follow along in your books. The extract is on page 118, so that's 118. So if you can just find that in your books, please. It's right at the beginning of chapter 6. So theoretically, you should have read this already. So one last time, page 118.
A sliver of moon rose over the horizon, hardly large enough to make a path of light, even when it sat right down on the water. But there were other lights in the sky that moved fast, winked, or went out, though not even a faint popping came down from the battle fought at 10 miles height. But a sign came down from the world of grown-ups, though at the time there was no child awake to read it. There was a sudden bright explosion and a corkscrew trail across the sky, then darkness again, and stars. There was a speck above the island, a figure dropping swiftly beneath a parachute, a figure that hung with dangling limbs. The changing winds of various altitudes took the figure where they would. Then, 3 miles up, the wind steadied and bore it in a descending curve round the sky, and swept it in a great slant across the reef and the lagoon towards the mountain.
Okay, so now that we've listened to the extract, which I think is a very powerful piece from the story where a person is killed, we assume in the war, and his body floats down to the island on a parachute. And if you've read the rest of the chapter, you'll know that this body actually gives the boys quite a bit of a fright, and they assume that this is now the beast, and they assume that this is proof, because Sam and Eric see the body, they assume that this is proof that there is a beast on the island. Okay, so now that we've listened to the extract, we're going to attempt to answer the question. I'm just going to show you, these are the steps that I usually do when I try to answer a question. So I just want you to underline, or sorry, not underline, I want you to write out all the things that are underlined. So that, and that over there. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. So while you're doing that, I'm going to carry on explaining. So I find that these steps help to alleviate or get rid of the confusion, because often I find when I see a test question, I tend to panic a bit because it seems very complicated. But like with everything, if something's very big and difficult, you just break it down into parts that you can understand, and then you tackle those parts, and then it becomes easy. So, basically, when you break down the question into parts, you are analyzing what the question is asking you, and this is known as interrogating the question. Then I find that when I break the question into parts, I like to look for question words or introduction words. So question words, examples of those would be what and how, and then an instruction word would be compare or explain. And now you know why the instruction words that Ms. Gous gave you the other day to write down using the dictionary were very important, because you need to know what those words mean so you can understand questions in the exam. So yeah, these question or instruction words will usually indicate the different things that you need to do in order to answer the question correctly and for the right amount of marks. So also I want you to take note if the question asks about any figures of speech. Examples of these are metaphors and irony. And it is important that you know and understand figures of speech so that you can explain how they add to the reader's understanding in the text. The author won't put a figure of speech in the text for no reason. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully you've finished writing down. Thank you. So, hopefully you've finished writing down, but if not, you've got a few more seconds. So, just note that you must look at the mark allocation, because it will show you how many marks you need to, how many points you need to give. They usually say that, but also you can divide the marks over the parts that we've broken it up into, correct? Okay, so now I know that the mark allocation thing I might not have explained it in great detail or in a way that you can understand, but hopefully it's going to come through when I actually do the example. And then just note that I want you to plan your answer in your head before you actually start answering the question. So back to the question. So what I've tried to do is find the question words, which is what and why. I've figured out that there's a figure of speech, which is ironic, and I've checked out the mark allocation for 3. So, write down what the sign is, that's 1 mark, and then that is answering your what question, okay? Then, I decided, using the why, discuss the irony. Okay, so once again, like I said, it's important that you know figures of speech because now you'll need to know what irony is. Okay, and then that answers that little thing over there. And then we'll see that we have 1 mark for that, and then I can assume it's 1 mark for explaining that it is ironic. But now, when you're arguing, okay, people won't believe you if you don't give proof. So that's in a normal everyday argument. Now, it's the same with English. When you're writing an exam, the examiner isn't going to believe you or isn't going to give you enough marks unless you can give them proof of why you say that. So that's why I've said the third point, which is give evidence. Okay? And then this relates to what we will be doing in the next slide. Okay, I just want to check I haven't missed anything. So in the next slide, we're discussing something called P. Now, I would like you to write down the acronym P. So it's PEE, and then we're going to discuss what it stands for. Okay. So the P stands for point. Now, basically what the point is this is how you're going to answer the question, and this is what you're trying to prove. Okay. And then the E stands for evidence. So like I said previously, you can't argue anything unless you can back it up with proof. So, and if you have no evidence, no one will believe you. So now, the evidence usually comes from the text. So you need to find facts in the text to prove your point. These facts can either be a quote, or you can just explain the fact in your own words. I would suggest a quote if you can remember, because it's often, I find it easier, but if you find it easier to use your own words, that's fine as well. Then the last one is explain. So you need to explain how your evidence in fact proves your point. So you're just summarizing your argument in a way and finalizing it. So I'm going to show you my answer. So this is the first one. I'm answering the what question. So the sign is the dead body and parachute which float onto the mountain. Okay, so that's answering what is the sign from the world of grown-ups. Okay, my second part of my answer is this is ironic because Ralph and Piggy have been previously discussing adults, and Ralph had wished that they could send them a sign, something grown up, a sign or something. Sorry, I misread that. Ralph had wished that they could send them something grown up, a sign or something. Okay, so there I've answered why this is ironic, okay, or that it is ironic, and I've given proof. Now I'm explaining why, in my third part, this sign was undoubtedly meant to be a source of guidance and comfort, but the sign that the boys received creates fear and confusion. This is the exact opposite of what Ralph would like, and thus the idea that the dead body is a sign, or is the sign that Ralph asks for, is ironic. Now we're going to go on to the next part, so please hold.